community and British Columbia. It's a high congratulations on the awareness of the building of the seriousness that's going forward and how it will impact spin-off into the communities and the potential of it going forward beyond 1 year. There were some reports online that I was able to access, and it showed that the wine sector for British Columbia would have a $1.75 billion impact, spin-off impact to British Columbia. If you extrapolate that to the fruit sector, that's an additional $1.25 billion. So British Columbia impact likely will be in the neighborhood of about $3 billion. For the local impact, the tree fruit sector and wine, there are no harvest expectations for soft fruit or wine or grapes at all this year. The yields for 2025 are in question as well. There was also a indicator that there's going to be vine death and tree death that we don't understand the extent of it at this point. The extrapolation for Creston, my expectation on that, and that's my extrapolation, so is 60 million plus for the spinoff. That's not just an agricultural impact, it's for all of us. And there's about 1,200 employees that won't be coming to the valley, which are your harvest people that generally come and harvest the fruit. And you can well imagine the impact to the grocery stores, the liquor stores, the gas stations, the restaurants, clothing stores, gleaners. I mean, it doesn't matter. It just goes down the line with that spin-off impact. The very sad part about our community for this is the summer student jobs that will be lost. For our own operation, we're looking at reducing 52 people last year to about 20 this year. The fruit detail that I have accumulated so far is there's 100% bud mortality on cherries, peaches, nectarines, plums, and what am I missing? There's 5 items. The cherries will bounce back. Looks like the resilience of the tree is there. There's the buds are pushing leaves as we speak, and they look like they'll be resilient enough to regrow and set a, if not a full yield for 25, a reasonably close yield. Peaches, nectarines, on the other hand, well, apricots, the missing one. Peaches, nectarines, and apricots, there will be tree mortality, and we do not know how resilient those trees are to what we've experienced. So we don't have a good view yet on where this will lead in 25. There have been some announcements by provincial government for replant. The unfortunate bottom line of the replant program is extraordinarily restrictive. It's aimed at contiguous 1 acre and larger, and it's also aimed at a grant of $2,500 per acre for plant only. The reality is to replant an acre of trees is close to $20,000 if you're replacing all of the irrigation and prepping it and all of that, plus 3 to 4 years of no crop. So it really is, it's a great program for someone who may be planning a large replant. And if that was on the table and planned anyway, it's a nice perk. But for what we're experiencing here, it's little to no help. So that's about the extent of what I've accumulated for the expectations and what we see out there. A couple of interesting points, decision points we've made. The reality of the tourism industry, we don't have people driving in from Calgary and Edmonton to buy cauliflower and broccoli. So we've also made a decision to reduce our vegetable planting by about 20 to 25%, because we don't feel we can sell what we sold last year without that tourist trade being there. And that, I guess, gentlemen, is pretty much the story.
Hi, Frank. Kelly Vandenberg. I haven't met you before. Pleased to meet you. I have 3 points that I would like to raise with you. Number one, how is the Ministry of Ag reaching out, talking to the producers to understand where you're at? How does that work?
We have had some surprises on that, in the sense that it hasn't been as active as we expected it to be. Brittany Anderson has reached out a couple of times. My issue with that is Brittany's not terribly experienced in the agricultural sector, so her understanding, I think, of what is the seriousness of this and what is needed is missed. And it's not a negative, it's just a simple thing that she doesn't have that level of experience. My understanding is the Minister of Agriculture has been in contact with bodies like the BC Cherry Association, the Wine Group. There's a number of groups that have presented to the Minister of Agriculture with the issues. I have not seen a lot of feedback or information coming back from that, other than commitments by Premier BB that they would stand behind the agricultural sector. And from what I've seen on the having to stand behind the agricultural sector with, like I said, the replant program, not a lot of help there.
Go ahead. The second thing is, and I don't know if you're going to be very much aware of this, but how does this impact honey producers?
I've been speaking to a number of the beekeepers, because they obviously provide pollination services to the orchards. As I understand it, the beekeepers have had total cancellations of pollinators to the orchards. One of the beekeepers said that impact to them would be about $20,000 for the year for their operation. The other beekeeper, as I understand it, was about $18,000. From my own personal perspective, we generally buy bumblebees for our operation, and that comes from Terralink out of the Lower Mainland. We've obviously canceled those orders as well.
Then, if I may, last one, a little bit far-fetched, but thinking beyond getting out of this, because I understand this happened back in 1958 as well, speaking of Kanshuk and this type of a situation. So there is a kind of a, maybe we understand what might happen. But going forward, how do you feel our airport facility could help your market? Do you see any advantage with the airport being part of that synergy, or is it primarily trucking transportation that moves products in and out?
It's an interesting question. For our operation, we don't wholesale. We're strictly a fresh market operation. We're highly diversified, and we produce product specifically for the local market as well as the tourist. And we've gauged our diversity based on what we're able to sell directly to people. Typically we don't grow in excess, and so as a result, we don't use trucking to haul product out of the valley, and we don't air freight it out, because like cherries are often air freighted out for export markets. that having said that, that also is one of our problems, is because as a diversified operation as we are, and there's about 18 of them in British Columbia as we are, there's absolutely zero insurance, agri-stability, agri-invest. Any of the government programs don't fit because of the high level of diversity. We looked into this when we first opened our operation, and I had a meeting with Aaron Carr from Apex. And the discussion we had basically pointed out that my premiums and my costs of maintaining records of the diversity that we have, the return on that was negative. So we are self-insured. We will take the $300,000 hit this year on the bottom of the financial statement as red ink. That'll be us. And so it's going to be a matter of how do we minimize those impacts? How do we keep the people we've trained? How do we support the community that has supported us? You know, these are all things as we go forward. We even talked about things like if there's an opportunity to import soft fruit, we would import it to have it in our operation at our cost, so that it gave people that opportunity to be able to come in and have the things they normally expect to see, because a lot of people don't understand what this is all about. I ran into a situation at Kilos maybe 3 weeks ago, which was a good example of where people don't understand. And one of the individuals said, well, gee, Frank, how much of a crop are you going to have? Is it going to be like 30% or 50%? And I said, no, you know, it's zero. There is no crop. His friend standing next to him said, oh, another good reason to raise the prices. Oh, wait a minute. I have no crop, but I raise the prices. What have I done? But there we'll have that. That's a reality.
Chair.
Director Jackson.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. It is really good to have the very local perspective, and that's kind of going to be what my main question is here in a second. But on export by air, I mean, I've chatted with Don Lowe about this a few times, and I'm going to see him later today. I'm going to ask him again. It's a real niche market, and stuff that comes home, if you truck your cherries, you can't get the truck, and they're a little off. You get to the wholesaler, wherever, they're going to talk you down, and you're going to make no money. There's a movie years ago called Splash. Watch the first 10 minutes of that movie. That's real life. It's got nothing to do with the rest of the movie. That's life in the fruit and vegetable marketplace. So yeah, it's a niche thing too. And air freighting to Europe with exactly certain types of size of cherries, that's where there's money. But there's not money in what you just might happen to get because of the year. So that's a big thing. But if we wanted to understand more, I'd invite back the guy we had from Pontlin College through AKBLG years ago. And he came up here and he told us with big pie charts, where is the money? And there was one year he said, Loblaws, bottom line, the board said they want to see 1% improvements. They squeezed the farmers 10%, they got 1% net. Because the farmers only took 10% of the pie, total. And you look at how Safeway operates. They own some of the producers. They own all the trucking. They own huge warehousing, like blocks and blocks together in Burnaby, South Burnaby in Vancouver, Burnaby, New West of the border. They own the retailer, and they can make their profit wherever they want. They have a union issue one year, and the retail outlets make no money. They know it's coming up, and they say, well, we have no money. Where did they make the money? Somewhere else. So if we want to understand it, I'd get this guy from Pontlin back, and he'd give us a really good presentation on what small local producers are fighting against on this big thing, where all the money is in the hands of a few boardroom decisions. My concern is, and I'd like to listen to CBC Daybreak, and I've heard a few things about this, including the $2,500 an acre, but everyone they talk to is from the Okanagan. So the only question is, do we need to have someone, you and or a cherry producer and or any other producers here, get into the conversation with the premier?
No.
Because it's not apples and apples, unintended, across the province. It's a different situation, a different scale. Is there a way to get smaller representation from Creston Valley in that big conversation as EB's making decisions?
My understanding is that there is representation from the valley, from the cherry fruit growing side. There was a group, as I understand, went over there, and Dave Dean, I think, is heading the cherry fruit group for the discussions with the government. So I do believe there was some representation from the Creston side on the commercial cherry side. From an operation like ours is because there's only 18 of us in British Columbia, the opportunity is lost. They're just, we're too small. We get swept under the carpet. So that's the unfortunate situation. And we recognized that when we started the operation 10 years ago. The risk is there.
You have no voice.
But there was no sort of expectation of what we just experienced. I think you commented that in 1958 there was a similar incident. Well, yes, there was, but the difference was the tree mortality problem wasn't there. And actually the coldest temperatures Creston has ever experienced was between 1938 and 1943. Trees were dormant and they survived. Trees weren't dormant this go around. We were plus temperatures for 6 to 8 weeks prior to the polar vortex hitting. And that's the side that we have no experience in. That's the side where a cambium layer is as brown as coffee. Not in everything, but in a lot of the branches. And that's why we're not sure where this will lead to with the things like peach trees and apricot trees and trees. They're definitely, at best, will be able to rejuvenate the trees at some level, but it's likely will take more than 1 year to rejuvenate those trees to get them back into a canopy that will produce the yield. If it's a replant, at 72, you think I'm going to replant? I don't think so. I'm not going to start harvesting peaches at 82. So.
In 58, would have they even tried to use smudge pots in it's extreme cold, or would have that had any effect? You can't do that kind of thing anymore.
I experienced a freeze out in 1981, I believe it was, and it was in February. And I had an individual working for me that year that was working in a short sleeve shirt. It looked like he'd been in Hawaii. Within 24 hours, we were minus, with the wind chill, we were minus 38 in Canyon. And we had deformed apples on the tree that year, actually, because the bud, some minimal, some lethal damage in the bud had affected the cellular structure. But the tree bounced back. And again, part of it was because it hadn't been warm for 8 weeks. It had been warm for a couple of weeks, and the trees were just starting to break dormancy when the polar vortex hit. So yes, we had a freeze out. And yes, we had a crop the next year, and it was a good crop the next year. But this has some question.
So when they talk about changing crops or changing what you plant to climate change, is there such a thing for food producers? Like, is there a different tree you could plant when you're faced with?
No, that's a frustration. I mean, you're absolutely right. That is the frustration. It's part of it is the lack of experience on understanding the agricultural side. Often comments that come from like that are not from someone who has a degree in agronomy. Often it's a nice, this is a great plan, let's move forward on this. But A, where do you get these things? B, the other thing is for replant at this point, I'm not sure I'd even want to have trees next year because those nurseries were also exposed to this temperature. There's going to be a lot of damage in those young trees that you would be planting next year, and I'm hoping that
Stunted.
So that's another issue. And it's not just in British Columbia. Washington State was hit pretty hard as well. Not so sure. It's an interesting vacuum right now from Washington State. I'm seeing no news, good or bad. I go onto the internet regularly trying to find what's going on there. I don't know, I don't understand what's going on down there for why they're not sharing the information. There are some locations that are in fact, expecting to have a crop. South of Brewster, they're expecting to have a crop. North of Brewster, they're not. So, you know, there is some interesting dynamics happening down there as well.
So even if we had a massive replant subsidized program, sounds like the availability of the actual trees you want to replant wouldn't be in the numbers that would help immediately, is that correct?
I don't think it would be possible.
Yeah.
The other part of it too, Arnie, is a lot of the focus on the replant is the restrictions on it are pretty significant. And when I have someone at a grand perspective advocating what I should be planting on the farm, I think that is the wrong direction, because I think after 50 some years of experience, I would know what I need to plant. But when somebody, and I love the idea of new stuff, I absolutely think it's awesome to innovate and have an opportunity to improve what we already have. It's not there. Just, you know, it's a great idea. So you know what? Throw $50 million at the research center in the Okanagan, and let's start developing some of these resilient trees, because there's none out there.
Thanks, Frank.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Thank you for coming in today.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for having me. It's awesome. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you're next.
Right. So good morning, directors, mayor, staff. It's very interesting to be on this side of the table, but I have to honestly say that since I've left local government, I'm still doing what I loved to do when I was in local government and advocating for agriculture. So this is an honor to represent the two organizations that I am today, Creston Valley Food Action Coalition and the Fields Forward Society. In front of you, I've presented a large package with a lot of information, and I wanted to have it to you sooner, but Carly went on vacation, and I just said that we would do it this way. You can take it away, read it. I'm going to hit on a couple highlights of the two organizations, and then we can have further discussion for future projects possibly. So I'm not going to go through, who we are, our board. I'm just going to touch briefly on our staff and the way that we have conducted the two organizations. So in June of 2023, Fields Forward Society and the Creston Valley Food Action Coalition started to really have conversation around the synergies of their organizations and how we could work together, and also share staff, because both were struggling with the fact that they had a certain workload, but they did not have full-time component as an organization. So we stabilized that. I moved into an executive director position by contract originally from May to September. I was working 3/4 time for Fields Forward and 1/4 for Food Action Coalition. Really, in the Food Action Coalition side, we had two personnel that were also supporting programs. We have Riley Collins, who is our farmers market manager. She came on, we had a little insecurity last year, but we've stabilized with her coming back to the organization in September. And then we also had an amazing volunteer, Laura Janey, who took over the Harvest Share program until we found a person to stabilize that program, which was Nicole Day. This year we're back in the boat because of, you've just heard Frank's comments about where Harvest Share is going to be this year. And also we've had some projects come into place. So Nicole is going to move into some more specific project work. And she is going to be really looking at market collaboration and working on the projects of Indigenous engagement principles and social inclusivity in our market. So we'll be working closely with Lower Kootenay Band and also the Outspoken organization in the Creston Valley. Coming to the Fields Forward, we through an ITSE grant, we received $35,000 in funding in the fall intake for programming for this year. So with that, yesterday was the first start date for Brian Kearley. He is going to be specializing in our product development and working with producers and also farmers market vendors, and primarily focusing on the freeze dryer application. We've got it fairly stable now, and we are producing. Last year we did a lot of trials, and this will be the first year that we go out to community for service of the products that they want to bring in. Again, we were hoping for larger volumes, but we'll see what this year brings us. Also, we moved into a design tech role with Juelson Fernandez. He is primarily focusing on the label printing that we have. We do not want to be in competition with the local providers that are already providing that service, but if you're a Food Hub user and or farmers market vendor, you can take advantage of that, and Juelson will help with logo design, website design, and also cross-pollination of marketing materials for them. And the advantage that we have is with the printing unit that we have at Fields Forward at the Food Hub, we can do small batch printing of 1 or 2 labels. Like if a market vendor has multiple products, it's just a little bit more cost effective for them than going to the local print shops. So they get to, try out some things before having to commit to large volumes. And then we also just hired a joint position. So these are all shared positions between Fields Forward and Creston Valley Food Action Coalition. We have a market and media person, Creston Mitchell, who will be starting April 15th. And Creston is going to be working 2 days a week, primarily focusing on our social media side of things, and then working with vendors for specific vendor profiles in the community. So out of all of the positions between Food Action Coalition and Fields Forward, we have a total this year of 3.5 people that will be working in those capacities. So everybody is, other than myself, everybody is part-time. And the interesting fact on that is that's what they wanted. We went out for more full-time positions, and the candidates that we interviewed, when they got into the interview, they really wanted, just because of some challenges, some were childcare, some were just home life balance, they wanted to work part-time. So we went back to ITSE and, presented that, and they're like, if you're meeting the objective, if it's 3 people or 2 people, we're okay with that. So, we're excited about this opportunity because it's going to, I think, give an advantage of people in the workforce that have that home life balance, but are also passionate because this works for them. So we're hoping to keep that retention. Couple other things that we are sitting on. So the Fields Forward Society and the Food Hub still has a community of practice meeting once a month with the food hubs from around the province. And we're also working on stabilizing. The provincial government realized that they invested in these food hubs and now have a problem. The funding is coming to an end, or the stabilization funding that they initially invested in these projects. And out of the 12 food hubs that were funded, 6 of them are in jeopardy of closing this year. We are not one of them. So very thankful for that, but we meet once a month, and ministry has representation, Jennifer Walsh and Jeanette Miller, that sit on those meetings. And then the ministry has also invested in a consultant that is basically looking at everybody's business plans again, and will assess where we're moving in the future. Creston has been put off to the second round of that because we're stable at this moment. So some really good news coming out of it. When we go into our community programs, I just want to talk a little bit about the Food Hub itself, because Fields Forward is in 2 entities. There's the policy and procedure and advocating side, and then there's the actual operation of the Food Hub. Before you'll see a list of our anchor users. And so the highlights, I just want to point out a little bit, we've changed the structure from when it was originally set up. When we were originally set up, it was looking at what could the Food Hub do themselves and then help producers. When I came in, we really looked at the fact that we were trying to manage other people's businesses too much. And we kind of pulled back and then went with the support of the other businesses. So since then, Pippin Point has taken over all of the juice processing in Fields Forward. They lease the equipment from us on an annual. Fairman Farm still operates the juice press. And probably this year, we're in discussions right now because it's making a point that that equipment really does not need to be owned and entertained by Fields Forward anymore. We have established, viable businesses in that field. Of course, they're gonna go through some rockiness this year with not having the fruit available to them, but they are confident that they will recover and that there is still a market there. So we're looking at disposing of some of the juice equipment, but keeping them as an anchor tenant in our business and then reinvesting that equipment funding more into the commissary kitchen side. So you'll see the list of juicing customers there. Kiamana Acres is now Old Iron Ranch, and they are still an anchor tenant in our facility doing egg processing. We also have Mammoth Foods, who is managing the freeze dryer side, and that's Brian. So he's kind of working on his own operation, and then he is going to drive that forward for us moving forward as well. And you'll see the list of customers that we did trials with last year. And one of the things that I want to point out is our relationship with school district number 8, and through the Harvest Share program last year, we were able to glean some strawberries, some blueberries, and we put those into our breakfast programs in the local school. And this year we are going to be expanding that program again, depending on what we have access to. We also have commissary kitchen users that are listed there. These are anchor tenants that are using the facility on a once a week or twice a week, or even sometimes 5 days a week in the kitchen season. And then we have the interested customers that we're working with this year from large capacities. A couple of them are food truck vendors. A couple of them are looking at assisting us in our Feeding Futures program. And then just a couple farmers looking to expand their farmer market operation. Interesting fact, and I'm extremely proud of this when you look at what the Food Hub is offering to businesses in our community. So in 2023, from June to November, through our services offered and the equipment at the Food Hub, we generated $280,000 in community service revenue through the Food Hub. And then additionally, when you look at what was developed in the Food Hub and then sold in fruit stands or through farmers markets, that turned into another $688,000 of revenues for those farmers. So when you look on the impact of community that the Food Hub is delivering, we're close to $1 million. So that is an amazing turnaround. That does come with some challenges, but we're adapting, and it's just like a farmer, we have to look at the seasons and see what's before us, but things are moving in the right direction. Some of the highlights in your presentation that you'll see this year in November, we hosted the Food Expo here, the Basin Food Expo, and we had the privilege of Chef Ned Bell from By BC Local. He was cooking in the Food Hub with the team that prepared the dinner. Also, you'll see the freeze-dried strawberries there for preparation, or they're raw strawberries in that picture. But those were donated by Justamere Organics, and we used those in the breakfast program. They were strawberries that were just starting to turn not attractive for retail, so we took them and put them into the breakfast program. And then the third picture is the volunteers sorting the blueberries that were also gleaned through the Harvest Share program and put into the breakfast program. So with that, I'd like to move into a little bit of our farmers market, just to give you a brief rundown on there. In the package, you'll see the list of our 2023 vendors. So we had 45 farmers, 37 prepared foods, 87 artisans, 9 wine and spirit producers, and then 40 community organizations that supported the overall 39 markets that were hosted in our valley. Direct sales from the market last year were $689,000, and then the neighboring business sales were estimated at $740,000. So the impact of the farmers market to community is just over $1 million. And those numbers were directly stated out of the BC Farmers Markets market evaluation and study that they did here. The other thing that I want to highlight for the farmers market program, and some of you have heard this already in the READY grant applications, But the BC Association of Farmers Market has an amazing program, the nutrition coupon program, that is collaborated with Valley Community Services here. They identify the families at need, and in our valley, we get funding for 60 families to be sponsored through that nutrition coupon program, which then in turns, those families bring those coupons to the farmers market and purchase fresh fruit and vegetables. So last year's program supported families and seniors to a total of $18,279. And this year we're on target to support the 60 families again. Exciting news for 2024 for the farmers market is we are moving back into Market Park. With the support of the town of Creston and completion of Market Park Phase 1, we will be excited to be down in that location because vendors really see the increase in sales because of the greater opportunity of tourist visibility. So everybody is super excited about moving back into there. And our first soft opening, so that we can bumble through a few of the hiccups that will appear, is going to be April 27th, and then participating with Town of Creston on the grand opening celebrations May 11th. There's a lot of events that are going to be scheduled on that day. Our side is including a live band, face band, painting, and some delicious treats and other activities for the children. So outdoor markets are operated from April to the end of October, and then we move back into the Creston District Community Complex late fall and winter season. Harvest Share, a couple of successes of the Harvest Share programs. So our main purpose of Harvest Share is ensuring that we can glean the fruits and vegetables and find them homes instead of them falling off the trees or rotting in the fields. And so last year's success was the total fruit that was harvested. It was 5,900 pounds. And so that had cherries, apples, pears, grapes, apricots, and blueberries, and even some walnuts. And then we harvested over 4,000 pounds of vegetables plus 600 dozen corn. Those 600 dozen corn went to 4 food banks around our community. So our local food bank, and then Cranbrook Trail, and also into Castlegar and some home delivery programs. You'll see the list of community partners that we support in our own community. So the Harvest Share volunteers go out, they pick the produce or the fruits and vegetables, bring it back to the food hub. Now we sort, and then we distribute those to our community partners with support from the Creston Valley Food Bank as well, or the Gleaners Association. So this year, our main focus is for Fields Forward and the Food Action Coalition are to continue improvements of our organization. We want to explore the options of collaborating more with the Creston Valley Gleaners Society and Food Bank, working together towards our community food security issues, collaborating with other agricultural focused groups in the Creston Valley to find synergies and support in advocating for our community programs and or new program development, relationship building with and advocating for more resource time from the Kootenay Boundary Advisor Program and the Central Kootenay Food Policy Council. The Food Hub, we have already identified that we are going to need a larger facility. We are busting at the seams on the commissary kitchen side. So we want to really start looking this year and working with provincial government and local government on what are our future facility needs and assessments. We want to continue to work towards our revenue neutral food fixed cost programs or operational plan on our current location, increase our user base. This is a really exciting program that I'm super proud to be working on. It's our Feeding Futures program development with School District 8. So I know you may be aware or may not be aware, but the provincial government has delivered funding to the local school districts to really start sourcing food locally and creating a food program for the schools through breakfast and lunch programs. So we've been working for the past 6 months with School District 8 on what does this look like. The Creston Valley has identified 345 vulnerable students that are coming to school every day that are not receiving meals at home. So this is a real passion project for me. So we'll be spending a lot of time on that. The other issue that is coming to light in Creston is small scale meat production. So one of the things that we're looking at is if we can find a viable location to move the commissary kitchen and some of the other resources, could we turn the current location into a cut and wrap or meat processing facility? Not an abattoir. This would be carcass only coming in, and then processing that way. So we're working with the College of the Rockies and seeing if there's an opportunity to possibly in the future bring a meat cutting class or program to the valley. And then the other fun side of the food hub is this year we want to entertain and engage in some community canning and cooking classes, bringing that awareness to what can be done in the food hub, because we get asked a lot is, can I bring a group of friends and come and can something like asparagus? And absolutely, it's a complete opportunity for the food hub. And then community engagement, because we have stabilized, we want to really let the community know what we're doing and how we're working together. Farmers market, we are looking at the relocation to Market Park, introduction of the Indigenous engagement principles and social inclusivity projects at the market, and then harvest share. We are in the process, hopefully, of being able to develop a sorting and equipment storage project located at the food hub, and that's all out of the CCAN. You guys were presented that in the Ready. Director Jack, and I think your community engagement was last
night, yeah.
And then Director Tierney, we'll see you next Saturday. And then as well supporting, so we this year we'll have to hire a new seasonal program manager for the harvest share, and then supporting the community food security programming. So current funding, our successes, this is how we're basically operating. There was some operating capital still remaining from the provincial contribution, but we were successful last year in obtaining a 3-year funding source from Vancouver Foundation, where we get $50,000 a year. That funding will remain until 2025, and that is under the Fields Forward element. It's EBC. We were successful in 2023 for 2024, a contribution of $35,000. We were just awarded $19,400 from the BC United Way. This is specifically for equipment, so we will be purchasing 2 Harvest Right freeze dryers, which are the smaller unit, because out of last year's operation, we found that running the large capacity freeze dryer, there wasn't sometimes enough product to go into the machine, so it wasn't efficient. This will really give us the opportunity to also test product ideas and scale instead of losing product that may not have been a successful adaptation for the current freeze dryer. And then we were also awarded $10,400 for the 2024 Harvest Share program through BC Gaming. What we are sitting here today asking is, we know that things are tight and we are running on a very, very minimal budget, and understanding that the budget process has been closed for this year. We're hoping that you may give consideration for discretionary grant funding for a total of $10,000 to the Harvest Share program to help stabilize the program for this year, and also be able to work on specific projects like the feeding futures and with the gleaners and the food security issues in the community. We're missing a little bit of budget there. And then in addition, the bigger ask is for consideration to for a review to be conducted of the Kootenay Boundary Farm Advisory Program and the Central Kootenay Food Policy Council impact services to the Creston Valley. Although we see the value in these programs, we feel there may be an opportunity to distribute some of the budgetary allocations for these programs to support the programs that we directly deliver in our community. Our local organizations could have a greater impact of the services offered to the local area farmers, work collectively to increase the agricultural awareness in our valley, advocate for the policies of change that directly relate to our valley, and focus on our local security issues, as well as creating a stronger agricultural collaboration and supporting local jobs. In closing, we greatly appreciate the support towards the programs we have received in the past and hopefully in the future. We appreciate the work that you do with local producers and the residents of the Creston Valley, and together we can continue to drive the change to ensure that we have a vibrant agricultural community. So thank you. Any questions?
Many. So it worked right here, knowing me. When you mentioned public engagement, what kept coming through my mind, and especially when you talk about through the chair, sorry, Kootenai Boundary Farm Advisors. Remember we had a discussion so many years back up there, Elizabeth would have been there, Hugh was there, you were there, I was there, I don't know who else. And it was pretty broad, a lot of tables, a lot of conversation. It was kind of like, to me, a beginning of a reset. Yields Forward came out of that, all these other active, what's it called, active planning, active
Yeah.
something.
That was driven through Laura.
And you be more focused, because that had a lot of stuff came out of that, a lot of interesting work. But it also made good connections. And that's where we got like Portland College and stuff coming in.
Yeah.
Because we only heard about what they were doing through that kind of thing. It almost seems like if your public engagement, part of it could start with one of those reset and update meetings. And, you know, Kootenai Boundary Farm Advisors, get them in there just so they get a little more sensitized to what's working, what's not working. I think we might be holding the contract for that this round. It's moving around, of course, between the three RDs. Maybe that'd be the easiest way to address a lot of stuff, because I just have lists of questions. Did want to focus on just one little more immediate thing. And for a little background, we were worried years back about all the cherry culls and other culls. Some, you know, people or farmers dumping it in the ditch and build up acidity and you cause issues with runoff and stuff like that. Started coming to the landfill. We said, holy smokes, we can't take this. Of course, we now have an organics diversion, but we couldn't take that wet, sloppy stuff, creating leachate, all kinds of problems, methane. So part of that was behind, well, what if we could juice it? What if this, what if that? So the question, and don't need to know now, and maybe it's not that big, what tonnage is diverted through juicer and what could be diverted if it's optimized? And then out of that, it sounds like you want to privatize that operation. I'm good with that because we struggled to house it, and all these issues. And if it is privatized, I hope there be some return of the initial investment. There's no strings tied because we're beyond the years of return on investment for community works grants. We're all good. We're beyond the 10 years. But it'd be nice to see that return of investment in the farm community if that went to support commercial kitchen upgrades or something else, new equipment.
Absolutely.
So wrapping all that together, what has the juicer produced in terms of diversion of waste? What could it produce? Don't have to tell me today.
Yeah.
And let's just tell community, not only how it's been the germination of a really good diversion and value added program, but also it could be much more. Do you have any
Absolutely.
numbers in your head?
Yeah, so I don't have those numbers, the tonnage rates on hand, definitely, but I can do some digging on that. And it, you know, to touch back on the history, you've identified Elizabeth and even Hugh. So KES and Elizabeth, like Fields Forward has grown and been handed, started with KES with the Kootenai Mobile Juice Project. Elizabeth was the previous ED who really got the food hub off of the ground. It's shifting, but there's really, really great things coming out of the community. And to your point of the initial investment, which was an RDCK project or a major RDCK and BC government funded project on the mobile juicer, definitely we're not giving the equipment away. We're looking at what that equipment is, the value of that equipment right now, and we're having that assessed. As well, it's at the point where we would have to reinvest a huge amount of equipment to bring that machine up to, it's getting tired. But that specific is taking that sale of that specific piece of equipment and reinvesting it into actual kitchen equipment that we are needing, and we're doing improvements in the food hub. There's a number of things that have been identified. We need a larger mixer, we need convection ovens, we need another stove, another range hood. Like, it is crazy how busy that kitchen is, which is fantastic. And the other interesting fact of that is how we have multiple people working in the same space. So when we first started, we were renting out the space just to an individual user. Now we've got 3 working stations. We're installing another dishwasher here next week so that we can have more access. And so it's not just one person using the space, which out of that, what we're seeing now too is the cross collaboration between them, the ideas buildings, and how they're partnering to deliver some services to community together. And also, you know, Coots Roots has opened up in the old Creston Valley Bakery. We've got vendors that are supplying to them on a weekly basis coming out of the food hub now. Bendoya Meats is taking some of the product. We've had meat producers that are doing sausage and cased meats
Yes.
at the food hub that are moving into Pilos. So it's really creating a new diversity for a space where individuals can try and you know, explore their own business models and see if they're viable without that major investment. And that was the whole idea of the food hubs in the futures, or you know, when the idea was being presented. So it's changed a little bit, but we're doing really good things.
So you're gonna book a room through Craig, Creston room for
Absolutely.
July,
Well, and so to that
July
point,
15th.
one of the things that we're doing as boards of directors, so we have a strat planning coming up with Food Action Coalition, Fields Forward, and we're inviting the Creston Creston Valley Gleaners board to that meeting as well. School District 8 is going to sit on that. If you guys want to come and sit in, we would love to have you in the room. And then from there, we want to move into community and say, this is what we're doing, but what else do you need us to look at? And really, the small meat producers, that has blown up in the last probably 3 months. We're finding that producers in our valley, specifically in the pork and sheep or lamb, are struggling to find abattoirs, one, to do the kill process or the slaughter process, not the kill process. But then the other hiccup is that they don't have access to butchers. And even a couple of our producers have sold, so Kiamana Acres are now Old Iron. They have gotten out of the pork. Jessica Pitchnin with Root and Vine they've reduced their pork just to home consumption because of the fact that the butchers that they were using have closed their operation because they're retiring. So there's a huge need for that. And we've got a lot of small animal impact in this valley. So, you know, it's one of the things that has been raised, and we're diving into that.
That'd be College of the Rockies.
Yeah.
As you said.
Yeah.
Great.
So it's another great partnership.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna say
thank you
this.
for this
I'm gonna
information.
say this though, keep your answers short, we gotta get this meeting
Yeah.
going.
Okay, thank you for the presentation today, Tanya, and the degree of information that you have provided, just clarity questions to begin with. We talked about 5 elements: Field Forward, Food Action Coalition, the Food Hub, Farmers Market, and Harvest Share. 3 of those are programs. They have to fall under either Fields Forward or Food Action Coalition. How does that work?
So Food Action Coalition is the entity of Harvest Share and Farmers Market. And then Fields Forward is the entity for the Food Hub.
Okay, thank you. The budget that you presented does not reflect all those elements, I'm thinking, only Fields Forward.
No, the budget that you have right now is the Food Action Coalition, because we have not approved the budget for Fields Forward until next week. But once that is approved, I can circulate that.
And yes, I would love an invite to the board meetings. I would love to sit and be the fly on the wall and participate in those conversations. So that would be great. Chair, let's get to my point. You had talked about 2 things. Plan for sustainability, because currently right now, you are of the one program, only half of it is, more than half of it is grant supply.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not sustainable. And so the conversation around sustainability, and then the other one was, you had suggested a diversion of funds from the Food Policy Council and the Boundary Farm Advisors. Now, the Farm Advisors program, that's a surprise to me, because from what I'm hearing from the ag producers, there's a lot of value with that program. Are you suggesting that you would deliver that information if there is a
No,
diversion?
so I guess my ask is a little bit confusing there, and I'm gonna keep it short. They're doing great work. Both entities are doing amazing work. It's just maybe, is there the possibility, because Regional District has been supporting those 2 for so long, that roll back a little bit of funding, or maybe add a little bit of funding to support our local initiative more and help us stabilize.
Okay, and so the question on sustainability plan.
Yeah.
What is your?
So that is what we're working through with the ministry right now, and also our organization with developments of new users. So we are diving into that with partnership with the ministry, because they have also identified that these facilities are not sustainable. What their main intention is everybody is coming to the end of their funding. So we're working through that right now. I'm very hopeful that this year, it's going to come with some challenges because of what we're facing in our agricultural community. But I do believe that this operation where we are currently located is going to be cost neutral from a user base perspective. And the thing that we will have to stabilize is this, the positions of the manpower. From a fixed asset, we are on the right track. I look at it, was 2023 was year one of our operating business. Most businesses take 3 years to actually become, profitable. I'm hoping to do that in year 2.
Thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, if you have any questions, once you get through all of the material, please feel free to reach out.
The chair, can I ask that this comes back to our agenda next month, please, for further discussion?
Sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. All right. We're on to staff reports then. Emergency program, quarter 1 report. John, are you there? Yeah, there you are.
I'm here. Good morning, everyone. Thanks. So, with one response, just to start with that as a bit of an update. This period, we had a level 1 incident out in Windle. There was a residential fire, and ESS were activated and provided some assistance for the residents there while they built their longer term solutions. This is the season where we're typically very busy with preparedness, our own preparedness, preparing to respond, and also communicating the importance of preparedness to the residents. As we get towards obviously fresh head season and wildfire season, this is where we tend to ramp up that activity. What we're hearing and what I've shared in a couple of forums already is that the snowpack on the mountains is quite a bit lower than usual. So we're hoping, but never like to use that word really, for a quieter fresh head season. But obviously the downside of low snow is the potential for more fires. So we give with one hand and take away with the other, I guess. So in our team, we've hired at this period a new emergency program coordinator. My opposite number in Nelson, Stefan, left us a little while ago, and we've now replaced him with there's a new EPC. Her name is Tanya Paul, and she's working out of the Nelson office there. We've done quite a bit of work this period on the emergency support services program. This is kind of it's a voluntary program. So it's one of the areas where we have to just continually recruit and advertise and publish. You've probably seen some of my posters, which have been put in strategic places. We did get a couple of people coming out of that, but it wasn't really the response that we were looking for. And so this period we've revamped the RDCK website for ESS, and it's really now focused on recruitment, trying to give information to people that are interested in joining the program and providing some more convenient ways for them to connect with us to receive training and be brought into the team. I'm also working with our communications people on a new media campaign, hoping to get that out in the next, couple of weeks, if not before that. Once we've had time to finalize all the bits and pieces. That'll run over between 4 and 6 weeks, probably more like 6, with more messages about ESS, just trying to reinforce the importance of it and generate the interest and drive people back to the website for the recruitment piece. So that'll be on the usual social media, Facebook and Instagram, whatever Instagram is. We'll be putting those messages out and helping to hopefully recruit some new members. We do see quite a bit of turnover, but the other advantage of having more members is the more we have, the better we're able to respond, because it is purely voluntary, and if people are away or whatever, then it can make it hard. So yeah, just the more people, the better. Please bear that in mind, or bear me in mind in any of your conversations. If there's an opportunity there to help promote ESS, I'd like to provide some messages and try to, again, drive that traffic towards the website. So in terms of resident preparedness, the user guide and the plan template for the Neighborhood Emergency Preparedness Program has been updated this period, and we're just working to get them uploaded again onto the website for the neighborhood emergency teams or people that want to start those teams to be able to use to develop their neighborhood plans. Other highlights, really, I won't repeat everything that's in the report. You can see it there. But we got a couple of projects on the go. We finished a project, and the final report and the accounting has been accepted by UBCM, and the funding was approved. That was for some work we were doing for the ESS modernization project, which provided some new IT kits for Salmo and Caslo teams. We have a project which has been kicked off this period, which is some upgrades to communications in the Creston Rec Centre. And we'll be working with the Rec Centre staff there to confirm the final locations for the equipment. It's going to go up in the roof space. It's for Wi-Fi connectivity. So that's between RDCK, IT, and the Rec Centre staff. And then there's another grant which we've submitted an application for, which is to provide some more equipment and some training for our EOC, the Emergency Operations Centre staff. We're waiting to hear back on that one. Again, that's a UBCM grant stream, and we're waiting to hear back on that. And that's it. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions.
Director Jacqueline.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. Thanks for the update again, John. I'm just wondering if there should be a revision or to the right at the top, the house fire. If I'm not wrong, that's probably Forrest's house in Windell, possibly on Windlaw Road. I'm not exactly sure where he lived. The residential fire, it says in Windlaw.
It
But I
was
believe-
it was Windlaw. I'm not aware of a Windle one.
Oh, okay, we had another very recent fire in Windle, and of course, there's a Windlaw Road. Okay, that's a separate one then. Thanks.
Yes. Thanks, Gary.
Director Vandenberg.
Yes, through the chair. Thanks, John. The Emergency Support Services Program, which is the network of volunteers that you're speaking to, do you have a number of participants that have expressed an interest in the Creston Valley area to this point?
Hi, Kelly. Yeah, good morning. We had a team in the Creston Valley before. We suffered quite a bit of attrition in the area, and we went down to about 4 members. We've had a couple of people reach out responding to the poster. I had another email earlier this week, actually, from another person. So We are seeing dribs and drabs, but I would like to see that number increase significantly. Kathy, who's the new victim services coordinator, she's working jointly with the town and with the RCMP. She's also going to be working with us in ESS as the local team lead. And in association with her, I'm hoping to do a lot more promotion and team building to get that built up. Kathy currently is undergoing her own training. She was finishing off some training courses, and she's doing the work through the Justice Institute. So once she's ready, we'll be doing quite a heavy push in the area. So, sorry, long story short, yeah, we have some members, but we need more. So we'll be working on that over the coming months.
Supplemental, if I may?
Yes.
Supplemental, John, do you have built into your program a timeline in which to measure this success? There should be perhaps a point of time to see where it's at and what kind of response it's getting. Is that built into your plan? Or is it just going to be ongoing?
I think at this stage it needs to be ongoing. The reality of ESS is a lot of the people that volunteer with it are retirees. They finish one career and then they're looking to volunteer at something, and we managed to attract them to ESS, which is great, and they're really experienced and great people to work with. The challenge is, though, that they have a finite career period with the ESS program. So we always see that kind of attrition where people no longer feel like they can contribute or want to contribute, or they move away from the area, which is something we've seen as well. So it's going to be very much an ongoing process. The changes we've made to the website and the social media campaign really are just to try to modernize our approach. In the past, we've used posters that I've spoken about. We've used word of mouth. Those have been okay, but we're not really getting the response that we need. So we had to look at something new. It's not like this is a one and done thing. It really is going to be an ongoing process.
Yeah, just a comment. Excuse me, we're putting money into the program. We're hired another person to look after this. This has to have some sort of return. This needs to show some hold within the community. So I guess I will be asking in further meetings how the progress is going, because it is a cost to our taxpayers, and there should be something that we get in return on it, and very much positively is what I'm hoping for. Thank you.
Director Jackman.
Yeah, on the return on this kind of, looking and reaching out and training people in community to support, I worry that Creston's big enough that people might just take it for granted. Oh, government's here. Get a couple of government buildings and stuff will get done. And it won't. There's not capacity. There's emergency. A lot of the government people are doing their government roles. They have to talk to the province. They have to coordinate this, have to coordinate that. They're not going to hold hands with people who are displaced or in distress. You need the volunteer corps to do that. But I worry in this town, in this valley, people take it for granted. There's no government. There's not a lot of government. Once you get up to Riendell or Grey Creek or Crawford Bay or maybe Weimar, people start to say, wow, there is no government here. You got a director who's spinning in circles and that's it. So I'm sure, I've seen there's return as you move away from the cores. There's return where communities are starting to get more aware, like, wow, we need to be prepared to help each other. And that's an ongoing return. That's, I think, what would have sparked John's comments a few months ago. Like, it's may have to, I'm, using the wrong words, but I think John said something along the line of, it's going to have to be first come, first served. Because there are a lot of small clusters saying, wow, we could be in big trouble and there's no government here. So I appreciate that degree of level of outreach and penetration into small clusters of community. That is a success story, and that's keeping John busier than he probably wants to be, and on the road more than he may want to be. But here in Creston, just think about it when you go home. Are you taking stuff for granted? That there's enough government to do whatever has to be done? If we have a major event and 3,000 people have to move? No, we don't. That's where we need John to keep getting this community support volunteer base pulled together and trained. And just the return on investment will be a result of awareness of community. And the dead end communities like Briandell and we had 3 community meetings where a couple hundred people came out at each one. We had outdoor, and during COVID, as that fire burned across the west side of the South Arm and the east face in Boswell and was headed towards Grey Creek, hundreds of people came out and said, wow, what are we gonna do? We're on a one-way road. So that's what it takes. The return on investment is awareness. And I think John's doing a good job where he can of growing that awareness.
Good conversation. Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
We move on to new business and letter request for funding from the Employment Services and the Economic Partnership. Leandra, I guess the floor is yours.
Sorry.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you so much for giving us some time to present to you our proposal for a agricultural forum for Southern BC. So I think after everything we've heard this morning from Frank Wologa about just the extent of the crisis that the agricultural community is in, I think that lends some extra support to the reason why we need to do this. So as the Economic Action Partnership, we would like to provide support to the agricultural community. And as directed by the EAP committee, we think an agricultural forum would be a great way to do that. So basically, there would be 3 main benefits to this. The first would be education, and we would host an event in which we would offer our local farming community, but also other farmers in Southern BC, expert-led presentations on the most significant topics that need to be explored, which is climate change, adaptation, risk management for the agricultural sector. And of course, we would tailor that to the agricultural profile of Southern BC, which is mostly soft fruit and cherries and wine. And then the second main benefit of the event would be to draw visitors to our area. So there would be a big economic, to offer some economic stimulus to the Creston Valley. We would host the event here, and we hope to draw people from all over Southern BC and further afield and even in Alberta. So there would be a marketing campaign that would present this as a very significant agricultural event. And there is a big need for it, because if you look at what is currently on offer to the farming community in BC, there are some events on the Lower Mainland, but there's nothing like this anywhere near Creston. There are lots of events in Ontario, a couple of events in Alberta, but this would be filling a void and providing support where support is currently lacking to farmers in our area. And then, of course, we would want to provide a platform for our farming community to present their experience, their needs, and their challenges and opportunities to a wider public, but also to other levels of government. So local government, I'm sure, is quite aware of the extent of the problem, but this would be an excellent opportunity to have panel discussions and to invite representatives of all levels of government, provincial as well, federal, if we can pull that off. So we would love to provide that kind of exposure to farmers to be able to explain their experience and what they believe is needed, instead of just, as we've heard this morning, provincial and federal government deciding for them what is needed. So that is why we think this would be a great event to have. And what is a further development that we didn't have time to include in the document that I sent earlier is that we've connected with the Ministry of Agriculture already, Jeff Nimmo, who works out of Creston, and he's very, very interested in supporting us with this event. And perhaps there could be some synergies between educational events that he had planned for the year and what we are planning to do. So we would like to apply to NCDC for $35,000 of funding, but that would require some leveraging. And that's why we humbly and tentatively, optimistically request an award of $8,750 from the regional district.
Director Tuck.
Sure, thank you. And through the chair, as like this topic pairs very nicely with what Tanya presented, like wine and cheese, or maybe it's wine and soft fruit nibblies.
Yeah, let's make it
Make it real for us. But as Tanya was speaking, I started shifting my thoughts around, and you said it a little bit now. I don't want provincial ministry and or elected and or us to try and talk to farmers about what farmers do, like Frank pretty well stated it. He's been doing this for 50 years, so don't tell him, ask him. And I'd be more interested in where the money's at. Because that is the big thing, because we, again, listen to CBC Daybreak and other programs, and there's a voice from Lower Mainland or there's a voice from the Okanagan. I haven't heard a voice from here. Not that it's here, but it's this scale. There's similar scales, smaller ag producers, which are a little bit different. There's no voice. And part of that comes to, in my mind, it comes back to money. You can do all kinds of things. I think Director Vandenberg just spoke about it a little while ago. Yeah, you get a grant for 3 years, and then what happens then? Where the money is in equity of families who've worked and worked and worked and worked and stuck it out, and maybe you're self-insuring. Like $300,000 hit, I'm not gonna take that, but some of these families, homegrown mom and pop businesses are in that position. That money could be totally gone in 10 years. So I'd rather we talk a little more about, like we kind of did in some of the other conversations, where is the money? And where is there gonna be that money in 10 years? Or is it gonna be divided up, split up, and be 3 or 4 or 5 little hobby farms instead of a working farm? I think the bigger question now is to establish where's the money in it? Where will it come from in the future? Deliver that message to the politicians, and the ministry people just sit in the room and listen. And we've had some excellent presentations in the past, and that's what it's all about. Not a program now or something we're gonna roll out for 3 years, maybe do this, do that. We are aging out, absolutely aging out. 72 years old, Frank. I think 6 more years from now, I won't look as good as he looks. Won't work as hard as he works. Probably don't now. We're aging out, and the money could just retire and walk away or get split up and be gone and evaporate. And then nobody can invest and start from scratch here. So if we're gonna do a forum, that's the first, second, and third thing in my mind. And out of that, explaining that, and are we important? We had a minister, provincial minister, sit upstairs and say, we couldn't feed ourselves if we wanted to. And all of us at the table bit our tongues and kind of snarled at him and said, what are you saying? You're gonna tell me this little cluster of 14,000 people couldn't be self-sufficient if the world imploded? It could, absolutely could. You're our representative in Victoria. You live in the Kootenays. He lived in the Kootenays at the time, and he would make that kind of statement. But yeah, we could implode along with everyone else if we don't look at where's the money, where's the investment, and will it continue? Or are people just gonna be time out, retire? So I'd put 80–90% of the focus on the money, the future investment, and holding things intergenerational or new generations, whatever it takes, and less about the neat little programs that are out there today, because they're not gonna help us in 10 years. Anyway, but absolutely timely, we need another meeting. It's just, what's the best focus? We don't wanna hear the talking heads tell us about all these wonderful little 2-year, 3-year programs that won't save us 10 years from now.
Yeah, and that's what our aim would be with our panel discussions. It would be more of an opportunity for provincial and maybe federal government to listen to the farmers than the other way around, to inform policy, to influence policy.
The other thing is timing. Sorry if I might chair. Any of us can put forward a discretionary community development grant up until Monday afternoon, or board cycle coming up. And then it could go to the board and you could tell at CPC something's pending, but we need to see that information now. There's an awful lot to do between now and Monday's usually busy because everybody else has their last minute stuff they want to see on the board agenda by Monday. But it's time critical right now. If you wanted to put pending Because it's honestly in for the board meeting 10 days later.
Yeah, I'd like to see it come to the next board meeting, so time is of essence.
Yeah, well, we can't make a decision here
No.
by policy. It's not a presentation, but we
Yeah.
can certainly as individual directors review something between now and our board agenda cutoff Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
Or noon.
Director Bandler.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, that was one of my questions, the timeline. So yeah, we have an opportunity to capture, and have in attendance, as you had suggested for leaders of organizations to attend, a very captive audience. We are in an agricultural state of emergency. There is no denying that. It affects everything and everybody in our backyard and in other areas in BC. This is the timing of this is couldn't be, with this type of audience, couldn't be any better. Our focus needs to be around innovation and adversity. That needs to be a big part of what the panel is talking about. This is also an election year. So you're going to have those people wanting to attend to hear what is relevant to the people of this area. And so that works in our favor as well. And so then the last thing is what you guys have just touched on. What is the timing for us to be able to do something? Because we can't make that decision here today. But the timeline is critical. We're going to be moving from the spring to the summer here shortly. And then forget it, because everybody's going to be campaigning. So we have to be very diligent in deciding how we're going to move forward.
Can I ask through the chair, Stuart might know, when's the embargo, pre-election embargo normally? So many weeks where a minister can't actually say a thing and MLAs are discouraged from non-political rallies or meetings? Is it like a couple months or it's
No.
variable?
It's variable, yeah. It would be less than a couple.
But we need to, it'd be good to know that, it'd be a hard stop. They won't talk to us.
I have a couple of questions as well. What's your proposed timing for this? It's a multi-day forum, and so what would you consider schedule in this, when we would want to do that?
Well, that's tough, and I think we would have to have further discussions with the farming community about that, because it's so, because we don't want to make it, you know, when everyone is at their busiest. So we were thinking end of October, early November, and that would also give us enough time for all the logistics, because we are planning for this to be a major event. But that is to be determined, and we can be flexible on that. We really want it to be well attended by the agricultural community.
Okay, yeah, because it appears our election probably be October 19th, is what I've heard, so that's the time of the vote, so anytime before that's probably not effective, and anytime shortly after that is maybe not effective either until they establish a cabinet.
Mr.
So you're gonna have to take a careful look at timing here to make sure that it is effective. That's my one point. My second point is to just back up what Director Jackman said. When we're talking about presentations, I think it's critical that we keep as much of that local as we can with our local expertise, because that's what's applicable to us. And as Director Jackman said, when someone from Victoria tells us things that they don't even know about in our valley, it's not effective. So I'm just hoping you can find sources of local expertise, because that would be very helpful. Any other questions? Good,
Thank you, Mayor.
okay.
Leander, really good presentation. Thank you very much. And great topic. And timing was going to be my question. And it would be very hard to squeeze in prior to the fall election. And so, but a really good way to start with the next government of the day. So, yeah, and perhaps it might have to be this time next year, but really, really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next item is discussion on, do you guys want to take a short break?
Sure.
All right, let's take a
Stretch. Oh, shit, what is that? Ah. I've been pushing some of
Two.
it.
By the way,
Stuart.
Well, it's nice to see you.
All right, everyone, we will reconvene our meeting. So our next item of business, excuse me,
No, yeah. Oh, don't say it.
put you out in the hall.
No,
I know.
I think it's usually me.
Our next item is a discussion on the proposed homeless shelter for the town of Creston. And so the directors probably want an update from myself and perhaps from Mike Moore. So I'll start this conversation by saying that it all began, of course, this winter when we decided that our community and the volunteers decided that we needed at minimum a warming center for the homeless. And so that was opened in December and ran until March 31st. And I don't have all the information on it, but it appears to have done what it was supposed to do, which is keep people out of the extreme cold. And it was an overnight shelter, and they were, so it wasn't just overnight, they left in the morning. I think they got a meal first thing in the morning. And now that has finished, is a group of volunteers, a society that is requesting that we proceed with now a more permanent, fully operating shelter. So one of the proposed sites, we have made no decisions on it, but one of the sites was 1130 Canyon Street, which is right downtown. I don't believe BC Housing has even looked at the property yet, so we have made no decisions. But we have encountered significant opposition to that because of its location and perhaps also because of the style of building and for other reasons. And so it likely won't be the spot. I don't know how supportive the society was on that particular location anyway. One of the reasons it was considered was because it's what we as a town had to offer as a vacant building, not because it's a perfect site. So we're still gathering information and looking for other proposals. And my concern, of course, is with all the information I've gathered through our own community and other mayors, the story of if you build it, they will come is what concerns our community. We don't want to have an increase in crime or other problems associated with, well, I guess you could call them the unhoused, and they're not all a problem, of course. But a lot of communities are going through the same thing. We do have a homeless population here. With our housing crisis, I have no doubt it will grow and we have to do something. So we're still in the planning stages. We will be having more meetings to gather information. Location is important, size is important, but really what's most important, I think, to our community is the service we provide. Because if we only just put a roof over someone's head and let them continue with the challenges they have and the problems that they face, we're not effective. We have to do more than that. And so my support and what I will be urging us all to do is find a way to keep this as a limited program that has a benefit for the people that need it and for our community. That's an easy thing to say, but a hard thing to do. So I'd say we're nowhere near drawing conclusions on this yet as to any of this stuff or what our options are. And so we have a long way to go. It's obvious the discussion has begun with the groups that are really wanting to do this. There is probably money from BC Housing. But again, I don't want us to invest in just a housing or some sort of shelter. It has to be more than that. And so I think that's what our community has to work towards, is finding a way to do this that is actually may help them get back to a position where they are housed or some of the other needs that they have, which maybe we can't meet in our community. So it's a very important discussion, but it's one that I think will still take some time. I will entertain a question because you have your hand up, but we do have a time for public questions after.
Okay, just a quick question around, when you said other things, like you said, more than housing, I just wondered what you meant when you said that.
Well, when you look at why there are shelters in larger communities, it's because they have facilities other than just shelter, as in medical, psychological, counseling, addictions, all the different things that I'm not sure we can provide here. If we can, great, but if we can't, we have to look at where they can be provided, because that's some of the things people need. If we can't meet their needs here, I'm really concerned that just helping them live a life of real challenges and difficulties, it helps, but it's not a path forward in their lives other than just putting a roof over their head. And that's my concern, is that if we're going to keep going down this road, we have to do it right. We have one opportunity to do it right, and that involves a lot of discussion still and a lot of consideration on how we do that here. Because if we take a large empty building here and say, oh, we can make this into a shelter, yeah, we can. But how many more people will come here? And that's a concern that our community has. There's already a fear of some of the behaviors that people see here. Do we really want that to become a larger problem in our community? Most people tell me absolutely not, and I'm listening. So where it goes from here is still, we're a long ways off on that. Dr. Vanderbilt.
Yes, and thank you through the chair. Thank you for putting this on the agenda. I wanted it on here because there's a big buzz going on. And we do see what's going on in other communities, that sort of thing. My questions want to be around the process, though, the public engagement process, particularly. Has that been thought out? Will there be ample time? And with that that process is the invitation for RDCK directors. This is not just a town of Creston situation. This is a community situation. This is a conversation for the community. And so far as a director, I have not been asked or engaged. I'm plugged in and understanding what people are saying, but I do believe that we should be at the table in consideration of whatever this public engagement process is going to look like, because this is a complex scenario and it has to be well thought through. And speaking with the staff sergeant with the RCMP, the RCMP, for example, are very limited. This is a bylaw thing, if anything. RCMP can't do much at all. So there are concerns as well. But so back to the public engagement process, what would that intend to be? And how are we as directors going to be wrapped in these conversations?
Okay, well, so we haven't had a real public engagement process, and for several reasons, we don't have all the information that we need yet. So if you look at social media, there's a ton of speculation. Whether it's accurate or not, it's debatable. So we have a ways to go there. One of the important parts of establishing a shelter is, of course, zoning. And when we have, there's a public consultation process through zoning that the community has input in. So that's an important part of it. But we're not anywhere near that yet because we don't have even a speculated location or a speculated way to deal with this situation. So we're still in what I would say is an information gathering stage. Directors are welcome to participate in that, and I think we should be making sure you are, because it is you're part of the community. So it's a good point, and I welcome that.
Your Worship.
Mike.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I was trying to raise my hand on there. I actually did want to shorten that up and clarify that a little bit. So first off, you have a society that's working with BC Housing. The town of Creston is not involved in a homeless shelter. They are not planning to set one up. We are part of the conversation like everyone else when we're asked, but this is not a town of Creston function. So we're not planning a public consultation process outside of what's legislated for zoning, because we're not seeking, as an organization, we're not seeking to open a homeless shelter. There is a nonprofit group that is seeking that, not the town of Creston. We are happy and we're trying to work with the groups to facilitate and so everybody can have their concerns heard. But I just want to be clear, there's not the town of Creston working with BC Housing to set up a shelter. BC Housing had contacted us and asked if we had any buildings. We offered the one and only building we had for them to look at, which they have not contacted us to look at. But we don't have a public engagement process lined out for this conversation because we're not the ones that are seeking this.
Director Van, go ahead.
Just a question on clarity then, for the CAO, and thank you for that, because I didn't understand that. So this is a nonprofit group, you said their name very quickly, can you repeat that name again?
I'm not-
And they are working directly with the province on this?
They're working with BC Housing. I believe they're called the Den Society. I'm not sure the exact name of the society.
The DENS, D-E-N-S Society?
Creston Valley Den Society is what they have for.
Correct.
It's called the Creston Valley Den Society.
D-E-N-S.
Yeah, D-E-N
For dead,
for den.
living in a den.
So
Director Jack.
Oh, sure, thanks. Mike probably has more useful stuff to say than I have. I was gonna note, province could always override any zoning decisions you make. We've seen it in the Okanagan, so, I mean, that's a thing. They can override it apparently on lots of stuff, like where you have high-rise apartments or whatever. So, something for everyone to be aware of. When it comes to services, and I mentioned it earlier, kind of the feds in the province left the building. I can't think of a federal office in this town. I don't think there is. We still have a courthouse, it's kind of cool. We have a Service BC. I think that's it. Because even Ag doesn't have its own office anymore. It used to have the building, it's a funeral service building now. They just left. So we're at the mercy of KES, under contracts, cobbling together what they can to deliver federal, provincial programs, and we're at the, I shouldn't say mercy of, we are grateful to have KES, and we're grateful to have Valley Community Services. And I've had tons of conversations with Justine, how she cobbles together multiple little tiny funding sources for a 0.15 FTE to add this little program to provide mental health support or do something targeted for one was for women in distress that are hiding in our rural areas because they're at risk. It's a horrible model. And that's, I think, what I was gonna say, Arnie, that's what Director DeBoon is talking about. Every time I've seen it, every turn you take, it's a matter of begging scraps from federal and provincial government to fund supports, which are not adequate for what we have today. So I acknowledge the real challenge that you want to help everyone you can, but you want to do a good job. And as for zoning and all the other public process, that could just be overridden. And we all have to be aware of that. Someone can say, no, it's time for this place to have, this community to have this facility, deal with it.
Part of what we need, not just a shelter, we need supportive housing.
Yep.
In our community. And I think that supportive housing where they can transition from living in their vehicles or whatever they're living in to getting back on their feet when we have escalating rent and not a lot of places being built. It's going to be a problem that grows. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, sorry, I was just trying to, sorry, I was just listening, sorry.
All right. So we're not just serving what people think is the main problem, which is homeless addicts. We have some homeless addicts, but there are other people that need this service. And the overnight warming service was utilized by people that were living in cars that did use the shower facilities and laundry facilities. And I think that's the best part of it, is that we're helping people with those needs in a way that we actually can. And so we have to look at it in a broader perspective than just, some of the emails I get and some of the social media stuff just is disdainful to people that are down on their luck. And I think that's not fair in our community. So we have to do this in a way that actually provides a service where people can move forward. And there are people that probably don't know how to move forward or maybe won't move forward. But honestly, we can't help them if they don't want that. What we want to really do is help the people that want to help. And in doing that, we'll probably include the people that are here that need the help perhaps don't want the services. But if we don't try to come up with a myriad of ways to deal with this problem, it's not going to go away, and I think we're gonna have less public acceptance that way than if we actually come up with a plan that works for our community. And I say works for our community because, I've looked at a lot of plans, I've talked to a lot of mayors, and I know there's a lot of plans out there that aren't working for their communities. We're at the stage where we can actually stop and think about that before we move too fast. And we have time. We don't have cold weather now. We know there's people living rough, but it's not gonna be fatal for them to be living rough, but they were living rough before we started the warming center. So I really value the society that's there working on it. But we need to make sure that we have enough input from people to see that it is done right. We have one chance at this. We don't have two chances.
Thank you, through the chair. So I would like, I think I would have a request for the CAO in Creston, if I could get the contact information for the Creston Valley Dance Society. I just Googled them. They're not on a website. My concern is their qualifications to be able to manage this through. And then indirectly, skirting by talking to BC Housing, the community will be left standing on the side, wondering what's going on, where do they get to have these conversations? They think that they need to be at the town of Creston, at least I know the business community does. So it'd be very interesting and very prudent to understand who the society is, how you get in contact with them, what is their qualifications for them doing what they're doing, and how are they representing this area to BC Housing. So that would be very appreciative if I could get that information, and I don't know why I can't Google them. But something they just fired up.
Councilor Dumas can answer you.
So to give you the quick backstory is that when the temporary shelter was put into place, it was actually the Trinity United Church that had come to the town of Creston and asked for help because they had allowed the individuals to camp on their property. And so the reason that they came is they were concerned about the cold. And so we told them we will support you, we will facilitate the conversation with you, with BC Housing. We will help you, staff, help them get their WCB in order and just help them along. And so it was the Trinity United Church who put their application into BC Housing for this temporary shelter that ran from January 8th to March 31st. Now, Trinity United Church no longer wants to run a shelter. So out of all that committee and all the volunteers and the people who helped for those 3 months, a society was formed called the Creston Valley Dance Society. It is just being formed. I don't believe they have their executive voted in yet. But Trevor Latondre, Letondre, he's happy for me to give out his information. His number is 780-815-5892. He is more than happy to talk to individuals. I do know that he has a diploma in social work from Saskatchewan. He does have a binder of all his credentials and all the different areas where he has worked. He is fully qualified, and so, but he will be more than happy to speak with you. And just to clarify once again that the town of Creston, when we say we, the incorporated town of Creston, we are facilitating conversation. And we have a meeting tomorrow with BC Housing, Chamber of Commerce, the Dance Society, and it will be our first meeting and town staff. So we as a town of Creston are facilitating conversation moving forward to make sure that all voices are heard and pulling in pieces that would need to come from IHA or any other decisions or mental health, because those are all the different parts that would play a part in this. And so we as a town are facilitating, we want to be a part of the conversation, we don't want to be left out of that conversation. And so we are working with all those who are concerned.
Thank you then, Councillor Dumas, I appreciate that. And don't forget that as directors, we're interested in being part of that conversation.
Before I wrap this up, I wanted to just say one other thing, and that's that I've been inundated by emails on this, and I answer emails because when someone takes the time to send me an email, I'll answer it. The social media is full of this locally, and a lot of it is not accurate, and a lot of it is opinion. In all this time, in the last several weeks, I've had actually one person come to my office, speak to me personally and ask me questions. And I still think that's the most effective way to do this, is face to face. But one person in this entire community in the last probably month. And I'm amazed that only one person would come and actually ask me personally. And so that's what I invite people to do. We like our face-to-face exchanges with people.
Cup of coffee.
It's an effective way to do things. Yet our community seems to be afraid to come to town hall and just talk. And I just, it's an observation because I think it's peculiar, and it shows you the power of social media and people just sitting with their keyboards. It's a great way to spread rumors and opinions, not the best way to get information.
Yeah.
With that, we'll move on to our next item of business. Discussion on also Trans-Canada Trail data. I think that's our staff. Who's on here? Is it Joe? Joe, is that you? Joe? Joe, is that you? Joe, we're waiting for you to talk. There he is.
Oh, sorry, through the chair. Mark is going to just run through the proposal piece. Mark,
I don't see Mark on, oh yeah, Mark.
MC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Yeah,
Hello, Mark.
thanks. Thank you. Sorry, I just missed that. I was doing multitasking here. But yes, the Propulso data, or the Propulso concept, is Trans-Canada Trail and a company called Propulso have partnered to basically use cellular data, so geolocation data from phones, where users on their phones consent to their location being shared. Trans-Canada Trail and Propulso can have an arrangement to use that data and turn it into a valuable park and trail reporting tool. So they can actually, with this information, we can understand visitor counts in parks, like by hour, by day, by month, by year. We can understand where people come from, which is of great interest, I know, for other services as well. Just how far do they travel? Where's their point of origin? And when they land in a park or a trail as a destination, we can tell things like speed and direction traveled, which areas of the park or say a public access location are frequented, and how long people stay there for. So I just wanted to share that information with this group. We did present a report to the members that are also part of this committee at the All Recreation Committee. The reason I wanted to flag it for this group is we do have approval out of All Recreation for acquisition of Propulso Trans-Canada Trail data for our regional park locations, but being that there are two regional parks, in Area A, Rindale and Crawford Creek, and there's a strong desire for consideration of other locations that may be suitable across areas B, C, and near Creston. We just wanted to throw it out there to this group to see if there was any interest in acquiring data from some of the sites that, like the Martel beaches, for example, the West Creston ferry landing locations, the Goat River gravel pit locations like that, that there may be interest in this group to know about the usage of those locations. The cost for the data is $500 per polygon area, or per, if it's a trail, it could be a linear trail segment. So there's no specific ask here, but just wanted to see if there was any discussion that you'd like to have here about this opportunity, and if there's any interest in it and how the data might apply to this area.
Director Jackman.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, thanks, Mark, because your presentation to all rec was much more fulsome. We got a lot of detail information. One of the key things that, for me, that came out of that is that there's an offer through Trans-Canada Trail for various groups to access this without putting up the money. So I started thinking about, who have we got? So there's trails, walking trails under license of occupation in Riendell under their community association with East Shore Trail and Bike Association, Trails for Creston Valley Society, Creston Valley Forest Corporation is involved in trails, Creston Valley Biking Club, the Active Transportation, I don't know if it's an actual club or eligible, but there's so many groups that I would love to see each one of them sort of, I don't know who'd coordinate, but each one of them tap this for something that is very meaningful. Like if we were to somehow just track the corridor from the Canyon Bridge as you come into town, you give highway something really solid and saying, yeah, no, there are a lot of bicycles using this today. Drop the speed to 60 around the corner. Instead of going down to 60 and up to 80 and back down to 60, just add 1.6 kilometers or 60 kilometers an hour, and here's why. So I think the message we have to spread is that if somebody has a targeted area where we could use this data, that they all, somehow we funnel together these interests and make sure that you know how to apply what the deadlines are and get that little segment mapped. And I'm sure that's only 8 or 10 groups. I'm sure there's a lot more. I don't know how we communicate to them to get them to raise that awareness that they may be eligible.
My question to your question is, how do we get the message out?
Partly like this, because we've got a bit of a turnout. Everybody sitting here is active in community. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here, right? You have many contacts. You're not just randomly, you weren't going for a swim and said, oh, there's a meeting. I'm going to sit down and spend an hour, waste a couple hours of my time. You're all active in community. So please talk to somebody. And then who they would come back to. I mean, email me if you want, gjackman@rdck.bc.ca, but how to get the message back. I would love it if we had 20 map segments and if we only had to pay for half or less of them and the rest are all on the federal government's dime. It's good. I'm good with that.
Director Vandenberg.
Thank you through the chair. So yes, that motion, but it pertained to what we already had for regional park reserves and regional park services. So obviously out here in areas, Creston, BC, we don't have any regional parks. So the question from Mark is, would you like to consider extending this service to collect that type of information, which is probably pretty good information. I guess one of the things I would wonder about is this an app, and is it voluntary? That the person who's walking down the trail can decide whether or not they want to share their information for the benefit of this group. Secondly, will this data be monetized? And what agreement is there in place for the protection of that data and the beneficiary of that monetization? So those are questions that I didn't think to ask during the board meeting, but now that it's in my backyard, I am wanting to ask.
Yeah, through the chair, you did get you articulated my point much clearly than I did, so thank you for that. That is the consideration here is we do have funding elsewhere where we have regional park services, but we do not have any proposal of staff forward to gather information on any of what you deem to be strategic locations in A, B, and C. So that is clear. In terms of the data, they use the term ethical data, and that's an interesting term. So generally it means that the apps that are on phones that are downloaded, that if the user consents to their geolocation being shared, then that information is acquired by Propulso and Trans-Canada Trail, and then they do their analysis on the data. One of the ethical pieces of it is to make sure there's anonymity to it so they've filtered the data and they deliver the data in such a way that the user, like we will just see we will see a report and statistics, and we will see generalized themes, for example, like heat mapping of where people go, but we won't see anything specific to an individual or a location. So there is an anonymity to the data. There still can be lots of questions about that for sure, but that's how the data is structured. There was a third part to your
Monetization of the data.
monetization. I think you're looking at it is a company that TransCanada Trail is partnering with, so they have a partnership between their society and the company is a private company. TransCanada Trail does receive substantial funding through the federal government and also through private donations, but they are working. Propulso is a privately owned corporation that they're working with.
So I guess, further to all this, Mark, is there some way that we can communicate this to interested parties? So we can actually get the wheels in motion if there is the interest here? What would be an easy way to do that? Through the RDCK website, or is there some other way?
We have contact information for the different trail groups. I think there is a staff resource implication if, free, each location may be free, the $500 may be free, but if it costs more than $500 in staff time to fully articulate the reasons why a trail group might use this, help them consider locations, for example, help them understand how to use the data once they get it, things like that. It may be more advantageous for the really keen groups to obviously jump in and do that thing, but to try to get a broad use, it may be more value. We wanted to share this with you from the perspective of, are there locations, previously identified in staff reports, the TUS locations, for example, where this group may be interested on our own in acquiring this type of data. But emails, we can definitely send out an email to the trail groups, letting them know about this. There are resources they have. TransCanada Trail has a video that describes how the whole thing works. So there are online resources that a group could really jump into if they're interested. But I do want to focus on, does this group want staff to do anything specific for acquiring data on properties that we might be interested in for regional parks?
Dr. Jack?
So I do have a list. I had a list in mind the other day and I'm gonna rattle through some of them. We talked about TransCanada Trail. I think it'd be meaningful to monitor that linear segment that's the above Highway 3A off highway piece, because I know it's used by a lot of short-term people on Hart, as well as the trail above the Great Creek Pass gates, which are only people who are really diehard to go up that high. Just getting up that high is work. Possibly the Riandale Campground. I'd like to see if the community association will want to do some of that. The tech lands down to Galena Bay, very popular area for people to walk. So that's at Riandale as well. Kuskonak Highway pullout in the area south, but Kuskonak Harbor and Highway pullout. Crawford Creek Park, of course, we talked about. Columbia Point. Be interesting if we could figure out people who get there at 6 a.m. are probably anglers, and people who get there at 2 p.m. are probably looking at the view. But at time of day would be of interest in some of that. It's always been a interest for us. Mark, you looked at that for us a decade ago. Martel Beach, yes. And then maybe the Riandale Community Park and Playground. And I don't know if there's a way to divide stuff up like that. I'd even be interested in if the hall societies, like Crawford Bay Hall, if they wanted to look at the Crawford Bay Play Park, and if Windle Hall would want to look at the Windle playground area. But as the first ones, aside from the playgrounds, if you want to put something together to tap Area A's budget, which, is already massive because we have that $2 million mortgage we're paying off. I'd be interested in making a recommendation to fund the ones along Area A, like Columbia Point, Martell, just to take this opportunity while it's out there.
Okay. Thanks,
So,
Gary.
would there be interest with our local trail society in this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think definitely to look at the Goat River.
Yeah.
Access to Goat River.
So, Mark, I guess another user group then would be Trails for Creston Valley Society.
If I could, Chair, though, would we fund one or two polygons if they don't have the money? And I think that's part of the question. When I say we, it's not the royal we, because the Area A's regional park funding is separate from BC and the town. But I think that's key to Mark moving ahead, commitment of staff time plus that little extra cash up front. If the Trail Society feels that, wow, this is your active maintenance season right now, that this is not something they could do on top of that.
I think that for the Trail Society would be interested, but to get the data themselves and try to analyze it, probably not. They would be interested, you guys looked at the Goat River as what kind of access is going on to further along some kind of regional park within the Creston Valley area.
Any other questions? I guess again, the importance is communication here, so we have to just keep that in mind and try to just disseminate the information and see what we get back. And so each user group, if they can get the information and respond, I think that's step one. Keep it going from there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep, thank you.
So our next item is just to review the action list. Directors, you've seen it. Is there any questions or concerns on the list? Director Vandenberg.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Second item on there is talking to the terms of reference to do with the dog control service. It is identified as complete and will be removed from the list. Mr. Jordan Dupuy has spoken to me and that it isn't his intention to speak to the board on that. But I don't know if the intent was to speak to the board on it or whether it was supposed to come back here. Either way, that's splitting hairs. I just want confirmation that in fact, we will be getting a result from Jordan Dupuy on that before this is removed from our action list.
Through the chair, it's definitely not complete. I think the confusion is because the board gave direction to work, that's where the issue is currently sitting. So it actually should be an action item on this list, or it should reference that it's coming back to the board. It's not complete by any stretch.
Okay, that needs to be corrected then.
Yeah, no, I've just sent a note to correct it for next month.
As I brought up at board when we talked about the quarterly report, the conflict in the reports. If they can't be in lockstep, then there's no point having a report, so.
And if I may continue, yes, and so item 5, speaks to, or pardon me, is it item 5? Yes, it is the process for feasibility. That is when groups come to RDCK / the rec center with great ideas, great intention, great ideas, great attention, but they lack a process in which it needs that the correct information needs to be put forward to this board for this group for consideration. That is started May of last year. We're almost upon May again and all it is a process. I'd like to know where the status is on that because there are community groups that are interested in talking to us about their great ideas and they need this process, this template.
So for the chair, maybe before I pass on to Joe to see if he can tell where it is, I just want to make sure that the committee understands that that date isn't when it was started. That's the date that you pass the recommendation. Doesn't mean staff started it that same day. So based on capacity, it might not have started that day. But maybe Joe can speak to where that process is because I know that similar committees and commissions have been dealing with the same thing, particularly in Nelson.
Yeah, through the chair, I mean, I don't think we have usually it would start with we don't have we don't have a defined process right now. So to be quite honestly, with everything that's been going on, we have not started on that. We have done some work around it on other committees, but nothing that is written down. So for example, in service in Nelson and district, through the commission and discussions with staff around that commission table, they have set aside $20,000 a year for groups to be able to tap for partial funding for feasibility studies. Those are the pieces. I think it's important to note that as staff, we do not have the resources to do research for groups. So that is why in the case of Nelson, they're doing, they have that piece for people to move forward on. So for example, in Nelson, the only funding that the service has given out so far has been to the Nelson Soccer Association to do a feasibility study on an indoor soccer air supported structure. So that has been done. It hasn't resulted in any other work moving forward to date, but that work has been done. So what that does help with is ensuring that the work is done by qualified firms who actually can actually do some good work around community consultation on it. But even that work, you know, to be honest, when it came back, it tended just to focus on membership and not on broad public consultation. So those are the pieces that become difficult. The master planning process, quite honestly, is the guiding document that always should be referenced. And inside that document is a decision-making framework. And so actually that is what Nelson has actually just recently done, is reviewed that decision-making framework and has adopted that. In fact, that was only Trisha's on the call. She'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was at the February meeting of the Nelson Recreation Commission. And that document exists in the Creston Master Plan.
Supplemental, if I may. Thanks, Joe, for that. So then perhaps maybe you could bring that to a Valley Services meeting very shortly in the future. We can review that and help you with this item and get it off your list.
Yeah, thank you. Kelly, what we can do is Trisha worked most closely on that. So Trish and I and Craig will talk about that after the meeting, but we know exactly where it is in the Creston Master Plan. In fact, Nelson used the Creston Master Plan as the template for their work.
Thank you.
Just further to this list that we have here, and I would invite your the directors, your comments or requests to pull any of these to add them to an upcoming agenda, because there are things that are not completely addressed here that maybe should be brought back to our agendas as an item 6 here regarding Martel Beach. There are things here that probably we should just get an update at one of our meetings rather than going through this list. If there's things that you're concerned about that aren't moving fast enough or want more information, let's just make them agenda items for the next meeting, perhaps.
Give staff more time to prepare a succinct answer as well.
Yes. Okay.
Just opening the master plan. I haven't found it yet, so we'll do that later.
Right, that takes care of the old business. Gives us some time for public time before we go to a closed meeting. So I would then entertain questions from the public.
I have a question, might be for Craig. The IT upgrade you're doing for emergency services, do you know the timing of that? Do you know when that's going to be completed?
That's really chair. I'm sorry, I don't know the timing of that.
The reason why I'm asking is I'm with the Blossom Festival Society. We're running a concert May 18th, and we'd really like to use the square to do this. Anyways, So we
So
like,
so
like
that
to
would be on,
be
that would be on
invited
the public network, you can use the square on the public network?
in the arena
Yeah,
area.
okay. Okay,
That's
no
something.
idea, yeah, I'll put that on the request.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Elizabeth,
I have it written down, just so I'm clear. Thank you, directors and staff, thank you for all that you do. And certainly appreciate you coming forward with all that you do. Anyway, I'm here to talk about accessing the Goat River at the end of the Goat River South Road. Same concern I expressed 6 months ago to the committee. So now what's happened is the new owner has blocked off access to the Goat River, and it's, there's 3 people who are here to support this whole idea. There's more people here that are concerned about accessing the Goat River. Anyway, the new owner has blocked off access except through the gate. The Ministry of Transportation's right away. They put up private signs, but not on the actual gate. So anyway, RDCK planner Mark Crow said the survey shows that there's public access through that gate, but nothing is official, and that I would need to contact Modi for that information. So 6 months ago, I had requested that happen, because I was so concerned that we would be blocked, and I love this following all of us, I'll sign up, and there's about maybe 1,000 people and all their dogs that would sign up as well, who access the Goat River, because it's a quality of life issue. We're talking about all this unfortunate things that are happening in the world, and for all of us, walking beside that wild river is very healing, and not only about our dogs. So anyway, so we want to have a safe access to the Goat River for exercise, walking our dogs. A lot of us socialize at the Goat River. All my friends, we all meet there. Swimming in the river, it's so hot in the summer, and enjoying its splendid, healing, beauty, forest, and mountain views. I just brought my brother there. He's from Victoria. It's beautiful in Victoria. He was like, wow, I'm walking beside this wild river. It was gorgeous. He was very inspired too. Anyway, the Creston Valley has no regional parks. Area A has 2, I didn't realize that too. And we have little public access to water. So I know that many of you are on side with wanting a regional park. I understand that it's not only some of us, as everybody wants that. So, but for now, until we get a regional park, how can the RDCK and Modi ensure public access through the Modi Road, through private property without conflicts? Like, I'm afraid now to walk through that gate or walk along that road towards the gravel pit and then around to see the beautiful river, even though I have 2 good-sized dogs. I don't know what this owner's gonna be like, you know? So what steps can be taken to ensure hundreds and 1,000 people can walk through that gate safely and access the river? So that I looked at the minutes from the last meeting from 6 months ago, there was no action item. So I'd like an action item. Is that possible? Is that, we have an authority? So I wanted, how do we have safe access through that gate? And like Mark said, it's public access, there's public access, but there's nothing official, we need something official. Anyway, thank you for your time, thank you for listening to me.
Dr. Jackson.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think I can zero in on maybe timing is everything, part of the issue. First, my bad humor. You said tracking everybody and their dogs, Be a real sad thing if the dogs end up with iPhones before I get them, because I still have a flip phone. I don't think you can track me on it. I say no all the time. Anyway, more seriously, we've had changeover of our Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure area rep. Over the last few years, we had Jack Lesnick was very responsive, but then he took a position that worked for him in Roslyn. We had a big gap. We now have Gundla Briggle, She only came 6 months ago, roughly, and she's been very responsive for me, because we have all these legacy issues with highways and this and that, and she's gone out, had a look, we've corresponded very well. Your timing 6 months ago might have been just off.
Oh, yeah.
I would try her again, Gundula Briggle. I could send you her, you have hers.
Tuesday.
She's been very responsive, but she's in a big catch-up mode.
Yeah.
And all the winter ops are done, and spring is coming in gently. So I know she's been looking, tracking stuff at Armstrong Bay, North of Riendell, Great Creek, different issues. I'm sure she would be the one who could give a proper answer about maybe putting a sign on that gate. Maybe they could customize a sign if they were so bold as to saying Crown Land, something like that, MOTI,
Yeah,
administration and control, something that just signifies that from that gate is Crown Land, to give people reassurance. But she's been very responsive. I just know she also is very busy.
Sorry, which gate are you referring to? Because there's the one that's the swing gate, and there's that kind of table. So the swing gate is public.
just the roadway though, not the full property. The rest
So-
of that, it's just the road.
But when it wraps around by the river, that's also the same thing, right?
Yeah, it has to be defined, I think, where the private property is and where the highway stuff is, because if people go through the gate and they're allowed to access the road, but if they're letting their dogs loose and they're running all over the property, that's something we're.
And so then you're saying that gate and then, but the river itself is public, like, is there an easement, like?
Sorry, I said, jump in, I don't mean to, My name's Bonnie, I live on Goat River Bottom and I've been aware of this issue for a long time and all the gray area that it involves. One of my questions today is, on BC assessment, the property seems to encompass the river and go across, and I always thought that the river couldn't be owned, or is it up to high water mark, like what's the clarification of that? So people know where are they allowed to go here, or are they not?
Mark Crow could answer about take back and what's Crown, and as the river moves, he had a great set of words for that before.
Yeah, Mark, can you answer that for us?
Yeah, I think the tough without us all looking at the same map, obviously, but starting at the gate at the end of Goat River South Road, some users may immediately want to head south, and if they do that, heading towards the river, that would be on privately owned land. And that's a common foot traffic has gone through that private property. If you head straight about 400 and something meters, you are on public road dedication that's surveyed out, and the public road dedication is owned by Ministry of Transportation. Then at the end of that long straight road, you're into a former MOTI gravel pit. It's in about that location of the former gravel pit that if you go down to the water, you can get down to the water on MOTI land. But anything before that is private land. Like, that's the thing with this property. If people are follow the path I just described into the end of the road, into the gravel pit, but then begin walking downstream along the dike itself. I think there's another location on the dike where there's a fence, but you're actually a large portions of those dikes are on private property. So to answer your question, yeah, it is that land holding right at the end of Goat River South Road, the private parcel between the gate at the end of the road and the MOTI gravel pit extends right down to the river and does include the bed of the river and a bit on the other side of the river. So it is private land, though in the province of BC, anything covered by water is owned by the Crown. Crown has requirements. So it doesn't mean the landowner can do whatever they choose. But foot traffic in this location, right down to the water's edge, it's private land in that location.
So I also just wanted to say that the Goat River Residents Association is responsible for inspecting
the dike and monitoring what's going on. And there are times when equipment has to get in there really quickly, to deal with things. In that area, we talked towards this and there is a member of the residents association that goes down and is walking the dike all the time to see what's going on. The access that, as far as I understand, is being blocked off with brush or soil. I haven't been down there since last year because I didn't want to fight with somebody. That's the access where those people go to walk down there, look at the dike, possibly get equipment in if need be. Again, which can happen, just like that. So my concern is that, I respect that this is private property, but I think this person's really don't know much about the history of the area or what's going on. And I'm concerned that they're impacting that access, which ultimately will affect, that whole area if there's a breach in the dike or something that happens. And this has always been a gray area down there. So either way, there needs to be clarification. I think most people want to do the right thing. So it just needs to be set out what's allowed and what isn't. And you're always gonna have conflict down there because people have gotten so used to accessing everything. I think the previous owner just eventually gave up, was sort of overrun by it. So I do feel either way this needs to be clarified, but I also feel that over the summer when the use increases, that this is gonna become very volatile. There's definitely a lot of issues. There's been people camping down there, having fires. I mean, it used to kind of just be locals. It wasn't that many people down there, but in the last few years, it's exploded. So.
Well, I heard, and I don't have any verification of it, but that there was supposed to, I thought there was gonna be a park or something down there.
I think
Is
that was
just
proposed at one point, and I think it got vetoed down. People that were.
So that's not a real thing.
Yeah, and I think that at one point the town did have it marked on a map that it was to be a park. So if that was out to the public, people saw that, which maybe happened. And it's been confused.
I don't know if it was ever marked as a map or on a map as a proposal, but certainly been considered, not by the town because it's in the regional district.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Again, I just think it's been a huge gray area, so either way, we just have some clarification for everybody.
so
This
to
guy seems
clarify,
pretty aggressive, so.
clarify what we've heard so far, people can walk down that road, and I would really strongly urge people that do that to keep their dogs on leash there, because otherwise they will be on private property, and that'll cause conflict. So you can lawfully walk your dog through that private property on that road, and if you want to unleash your dog, it's up to you, but I would say that in respect of the private property, best thing to do right now would be to leash your dog until you are off that private property. But Mark, according to what you gathered there, it is a lawful access, and so they cannot deny people walking on that road to access the property that's past the private property and the river. So that's what I would say publicly, because that's basically what our staff have told us, and I believe that's what the survey tells you too, is that is a public roadway. It doesn't mean we're gonna reduce conflict, but no one is doing anything unlawful if they respectfully walk through that to access public property beyond that ground land and the river. So.
Yeah, through the chair, just to clarify, like, the land is owned by Ministry of Transportation, BC Transportation and Financing Authority, so it is up to them ultimately. So as locations like this increase profile, through increased visitations or become popular, like at this point, it's always been, Ministry of Transportation has never posted a sign, for example, saying no public access beyond. But I just want to be careful that we do always recognize it is their land and they have the authority, like if they are approached or if they deem there to be a public safety or other challenge in that location, that they ultimately control public access on the property. But as of this time, that does not appear that there's anything posted saying you can't go down the road or be on the gravel pit location. But it's just something to always be aware of. These are, like, that is still, it hasn't been used for years, but it still is within the land's inventory as a gravel pit location.
So Mark, would you do it as staff, or would you encourage the public to, as a group, to approach Ministry of Highways to get clarification as to whether they will permit public access there? Because access, of course, is the important issue here we're trying to solve.
Yeah, the ministry to formalize an access, Joe, maybe you could speak to this as well. But we have a general understanding that if they are interested in allowing public access to be formalized, they will be looking to the regional district for regional park establishment. And in locations where we can meet their criteria, this may or may not be one of them, you'd have to figure that out. We have entered into agreement with Ministry of Transportation for permits or licenses of occupation on their lands. So they will really just punt it back to regional district in a sense. So their staff will not be able to provide the authority to say, yes, the public can keep going in here.
Could we have a staff direction that we get that communication and clarification?
If I may. So I know that the South Goat River Residency Association is organized. I know that they have a meeting coming. It would be helpful, I think, if they could put together a letter that suggests this is what they're interested in and how they would like to support RDCK moving forward with this. Having that letter would be helpful for us, so that we then can, Mark would then have something further as well to talk to Emoji about. So that would be my suggestion. It's one thing, if you look at our action list, we've got items in here that are a year old. Okay, so putting together, the community voicing themselves together on a letter would be very helpful. To actually speed this up, because Mark has a lot of things that he's working on, as does the staff. Just don't want to, as Elizabeth was saying, 6 months ago, we had this conversation and here we are today. So it's a suggestion. And I think it would be helpful. Sorry.
I think that's a reasonable suggestion, and we would look forward to having that communication. But that would go to the Dyking District?
They're a part of that group, yes.
Okay. So if you could do that, that will help us. So,
Okay, I'll look into that.
yeah, okay, great.
And the meeting for the Goat River Residents Association is on April 17th at 7 o'clock at the Senior Center in your rooms. I don't know if officially anybody can show up for that. If they could. And I'll talk to the person that does the events. So I'm not sure if he's aware.
Yeah, it's a recent development.
Just to note, aside from the 17th being the Kootenai Lake Chamber of Commerce AGM, which I'm gonna miss, morning and afternoon of the 17th of April is a heavy agenda day for us. Rural Committee, Joint Resource Recovery, briefing with staff yesterday is gonna be a big agenda for Joint Resource. Yeah, so when we get out of there, if we get out of there in the next morning's board meeting, so I'm probably gonna stay in Nelson. Cause I don't expect I'll share that one. I wouldn't make the 4:30 ferry if I tried. These guys have to decide if they're gonna get home at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whatever, then get up the next morning. So it's a tough
I
night.
get it, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be difficult for us to show up.
Yeah.
No worries.
I did map if someone wanted to look later. There's Lower Goat River Road, there's unopened road allowance crown just for later. I'll leave this on. Anyone can go on and see the maps and query, and you can see that's private and private beef is the land use. And this just says Tierney, which means there's no other, it's crown. There's a way to decode this and tell whether it's crown or not. And you can see that road is public road allowance. And this other path straight south that Mark talked about is private land pretty clearly. I could see a new owner being uppity about get off my land.
It just needs to be marked.
Yep.
Again, I think most people want to do it.
Yes, I'll just add, I did go down to look and see the signs on both sides of the gate. New little building, the excavator work, closing the access to the dike. But of note, the gate is not locked. It's only hooked still.
It always gets cut off if anyone tries to walk.
Yeah, but the access is still there, is the point, I guess. And I know Gundala is on vacation, arriving back on the 9th.
Yeah, 2
And,
weeks.
looking forward to perhaps getting an invite to go along with you and Gundala, because it is of a very high interest to me, the area to be protected somehow. So something I will enjoy working towards.
I guess the frustrating part is that people feel fearful now to go down. And I just don't think that's.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, to Bonnie, I could do this as well, but maybe two points. The meeting that you're talking about on the 17th is unfortunate because we're in Nelson. And it's unfortunate because we're a funder. And so we should have a say at the table to understand what's going on. Conversely, if the group was willing to do an online session, then we could attend.
Yeah, jump in.
Okay.
Otherwise, we really need to be at these meetings that we're funding.
Maybe I can look at if they could reschedule. I mean, I'm gonna say that it's not like it's the social event of the season and there's gonna be 150 people there, so.
That may
maybe we
be-
can juggle it.
Be a little bit more difficult to, and online would be a lot easier to set up. And then Roger and I, and certainly Gary, could attend that, and at least be a part of that conversation.
Okay.
You'll save us from having dinner together and trying to solve the world's problems, because we're doing a really mediocre job so far.
My husband used to be the treasurer. He's not in that capacity anymore, but we're definitely connected with the people that are president, vice president. The officials stop down there, so I'll talk. Thank you.
Appreciate that, and thanks, Mark, for your assistance there. Before we move to close, are there any other questions? There's some people online. Is there any questions online? Hearing none, any more from the gallery? Go ahead.
I just have a comment related to the homeless situation. And I hope that when, I appreciate what you said and I really respect those hesitations because I think they're important. But what I really, really hope is that as it goes forward, the information that's considered is based on evidence. So actual evidence about what works best to deal with people who are homeless. And we have a ton of really good research, really good data collection from the agencies that have been providing various forms of support for community members for decades. And I fully respect the opinions of the mayors, but the mayors are dealing with the results of decisions and the results of very, very complex problems, but aren't necessarily doing the research. They're not gathering the data. The people who are gathering the data are the people on the ground. And then it's kind of finding a balance between the various needs in the community. Creston, I don't know the population of Creston right now, but it's not that much. So whatever services are offered has to be supported by the community. But I think it's clear social media is meaningless and needs to just be like in terms of decision making, right? Like that. So if we can look at evidence about what actually serves the community best, what's able to be supported by the community best, as opposed to the broader public opinion. I think that'd be awesome.
And I consult with mayors, what I'm looking for, is find a model in their community. And the best example of that is Duncan, where they have actual structural small houses for the homeless in an area just outside of Duncan, where they've taken a bit of pride in living there and are participating and maintaining it and are actually being good neighbors. If we could get something like that here, in all the different people that I've consulted with, that appears to be the model that works best. And I don't know how BC Housing feels about funding that, probably not. So again, there may be a model that works, but can we get it here? Maybe not. So that's unfortunate, but that's, as I say, what I'm looking for is to find an example of it working in the community. And if it does work in the community, especially if it's close to our size, I think we would have more interest in finding something like that. And coming up with our own ideas if we can emulate something that's working, so that's my search really, is to find other places where they have working model. Makes our job easier if we can find that out.
Well, it's a very complex problem.
Absolutely.
And there's no simple solution.
No.
The complexities are considerable.
The other thing that works in other communities is peer-supported housing. And so that's something, again, we may consider. But these are discussions with BC Housing to see what they are willing to fund and what they're willing to help us with in our community. So we have a ways to go with that. Okay, we're going to have to go to a closed meeting now, so I can thank you all for coming and stay tuned for what happens next.
Right. Looking at that, that's there, because, my favorite walk I went down, I think it was on a Tuesday and it was open, I went back on a Friday.